Does this look familiar? Yeah, I know it does. Right off the power pole. I know you did that as a kid to your sister, brother, maybe even unsuspecting neighbor. Box fights and so many power pole deaths. I was going to ask at the beginning of this video who had Chip and Dale growing up as a kid. I suppose the better question would be who even beat Chip and Dale growing up as a kid. I feel progress in this game absolutely plummeted as soon as you tried to play a co-op with a brother, sister, or a friend. Look man, as soon as someone played with you, you became some kind of chipmunk killing machine only capable of stealing bread and murder. The funny thing about this game though is even if you did beat it, solo or with a buddy, you probably didn't encounter too many glitches, if any at all. Chip and Dale is a very unique game and there's actually quite a few glitches in it, some which are pretty cool. But if you're familiar with my antics on Twitch, almost none which are speedrun viable. So they don't often get talked about much, documented very well, or even used. A small note, most of these are human viable unless otherwise noted, which means you can try them as well. There's pretty much something you can do on every level, some levels specific. So let's go check out what Chip and Dale has to offer. So, how about we break Chip and Dale even before we start playing Chip and Dale? We can trigger the demo mode by waiting on the title screen for approximately 17 seconds. This glitch requires letting the demo mode cycle until the tree stage, which for an NES game, the game has a surprisingly long demo mode sequence. After the demo in Zone 0 finishes, if we wait on the title screen again, the demo mode will again showcase the game, but this time it'll drop us into a tree level for the computer chipmunks to show off. If you push select on a specific frame rate as they load in, we can actually bring up the menu within the attraction mode, which is normally disabled. Then we have to exploit a lesser known mechanic where, in the select menu, if you push A and B together on the same frame, another menu will come up asking if you want to give up. Presumably this was added in by the developers in case in co-op you manage to get yourself in a weird situation to avoid soft locks. If we specifically use the code to kill Dale here, the game will actually game over before it even begins. There's another glitch you can do before the game even begins, and this one is pretty infamous in the speedrunning community. If you let the game go into the attraction mode again, just once this time and exit, the RNG which is normally present in the game gets screwed up and it basically becomes locked, so all the bosses and enemies no longer have any RNG. Normally the game has a ton of RNG you have to contend with each run, and getting a landmark time of sub 10 minutes and any percent is pretty hard. As of this video, once the demo mode glitch was figured out, there's now 50 runners who have achieved a sub 10 time, making competing with the RNG much more manageable. Bosses that specifically get affected by this are the ship boss in Zone B, the robot boss in Zone D, the weird catfish thing in Zone E, and Fat Cat in Zone J. Alright, let's actually start playing the game instead of breaking it before we even begin. Speaking of speedrun viable strats, Zone 0 has one of the few glitches that high-level co-op runners started specifically using in their speedruns. If a chipmunk throws a box into the other chipmunk's face or head, which, by the way, is one of the best setups ever, hitting your friend in the face with a box, and if you jump into their hitbox after, you can then tap the directional pad to initiate a zip. The amount of time that your hit stun is greatly eclipsed by how quick the zip pushes the chipmunks, so you can easily make up the time. This is utilized in Zone 0. Zone 0 contains one of the longest straightaway paths in the game. There's a few other places you can use this zip to offset the stun animation, but it was a pretty big find and happened to be speedrun viable. While we're here zipping horizontally, why not vertically as well? You can zip through specific objects in this game, such as metal boxes or apples. Sadly, despite it looking pretty cool, there's no real way to make this useful outside of casually enjoying how Chip or Dale scoffs in the face of solid mass. Subpixels matter a lot in Chip and Dale, and we can't reliably control that very well in the speedrun. So the one place that you could use this, specifically Zone G to zip behind some bombs in single player, is almost not human viable to set up and execute. Zone A has some of the best music in the game, and it's also one of the few stages we don't see in the 90% speedrun, as we skip zones A, C, and E. How ironic is it that it spells out ace in order of appearance? Foreshadowing much? Anyway, Zone A is quite fun as well because it's a big ass tree, which means it's a big ass vertical climb. The other vertical climbs in this game are a bit different, as there's no boss doors once the chipmunks reach the top, but Zone A is a little bit different as there is indeed a boss door. If the chipmunks spawn the boss door on the climb about halfway, you can enter the boss by dropping off the screen towards your death instead of having to go to the top. Zone B has some pretty pointless glitches. Zone B has a vertical apple zip. Yeah! Have you ever wanted to shove a chipmunk directly through an apple? It's one of the most pointless objects that you can zip into and will likely never have any usage in the speedrun. And I can hear you thinking, alright Dave, zipping into an apple is pretty damn pointless. It clearly accomplishes nothing. Is there anything else in this level even more pointless than zipping through an apple? And yes, there actually is. How about dying in a boiling pot, respawning, and not taking a life away so you can constantly die over and over again in a boiling pot while respawning and it not taking your life away? The way this glitch works is if you die and restart the screen, you're in iframes, and the game doesn't actually subtract the life from your total lives. This is the only spot in the game that you can technically die, restart the screen, restart in iframes, and die again before the iframes run out. I've always wondered if you held down right on the control pad and left the console on for an absurd amount of time if anything happens. But realistically, this is probably one of the most pointless glitches this game has. It might have absolutely no practical purpose, and there's no reason to do this. Even as one of those like speedrunning party tricks, it's extraordinarily lame. Zone C is technically glitch free as far as I know, as this next glitch can be done anywhere, so we'll visit Zone C to see it in Zone C anyway. If on the same frame a chipmunk is about to die, and they get hit with a box or an object that knocks them unconscious, instead the unconscious animation takes precedence over the death animation, leaving the chipmunk in some kind of zombie state where they get an extra hit without actually having health anymore. If the chipmunk takes additional damage, the chipmunk just immediately falls through the floor. So it doesn't really do anything either in the speedrun, as if you die, it's almost always more beneficial to respawn as quickly as possible in co-op speedruns to reduce the time wasted from the death, as the screen eventually stops scrolling until the dead chipmunk respawns. Regardless, funny little glitch that looks even more ridiculous as soon as you take that extra hit. Zone D has some pretty pointless glitches in it as well. Starting with some overlapping flowers placed on this floor, this is one spot in the game a jump input can be totally eaten. You can hear the controller here, the jump just doesn't register. I think it happens just because of the way the flowers are laid across the floor like that. This is the only spot in the game where there's flowers on the floor somewhere. On top of that, we have whatever is going on here. I'm not even sure exactly. Maybe the spinning enemy below is getting hit and still loaded into the screen. But if you throw a box off screen here, it's the only spot in the game where the box mysteriously hits something or someone and bounces back at you. D also has a pretty cool clip where you can straight up clip into this wall and send the chipmunk into the area below. This is the only spot that you can currently clip partially through a wall or a floor, and it's really easy to set up. Just pick up the box weight and push down as the switch lowers. For newbies running this game, it's a valid strat to skip a high death section right afterward. Otherwise, I wish this was speedrun viable. The inputs are totally RTA, but sadly it's about half a second slower than the current world record strat. Last, towards the end of the level, our favorite fruit, an apple, is just laying around. This apple we can't zip through like some of the other apples, but the screen does wrap, so we can jump into it and grab it off screen. One of the few spots we can screen wrap and do something. But again, this doesn't really ultimately serve a purpose. I still think it's kind of funny that we can use the power of screen wrapping to pick up this apple. Zone F has some marbles that roll down from the top of the screen, and in the speedrun there's actually a 2-frame boost that speedrunners also have to sacrifice 2 health going for. Well, I hear what you're saying. That's a problem! At the end of the straightaway path, there's even more marbles, and one in particular that awaits our dear chipmunk friends. Whatever shall we do to avoid marble-related death? Luckily, if you forward box throw in this game, there's a tiny amount of iframes which just so perfectly happen to overlap as the hurt box of a marble falls into the chipmunk. So you can throw the box just before you're about to get hit and run right through. The next glitch is really cool and requires a bit of a backstory. A while ago when I was streaming on Twitch, someone came in and said they remembered as a kid having box fights with their sibling. It was in the first level near the pile of boxes, and they just kept throwing boxes at each other to try to knock each other unconscious. But in one of their exchanges, they kind of floated up a bit. He said he distinctly remembered floating up with their sibling and kind of raised up into the air as the chipmunks passed boxes back and forth to each other. The funny thing he said was it only happened once and then never again. So I was like, huh. I tasked that to see if it was possible to throw boxes in such a way where you could perpetually gain height between 2 chipmunks, throwing them at the right distance, at the right speed, at the right time to each other. And it turns out you can. Not only can it happen, you can infinitely loop it until you hit a vertical screen scroll at the top of the screen. This is a wickedly cool find, so I tasked the inputs for it, and you can skip the entire pipe section that requires several seconds of waiting in Zone F. This one is arguably not RTA, as the inputs required would be very difficult to pull off, but it's also not impossible. You could probably do this a few times with good rhythm with a friend, but doing it in such a way where it's so fast and to save time, I don't think it's RTA. It would require a ton of practice. In Zone E, there's a boat, and guess what chipmunks can do with the boat? Nothing. Nothing at all. But there is a unique hammer in this level. The hammer usually requires 2 swings to destroy blocks in the block section, but if you jump up just right, you can use the hammer to destroy blocks in 1 swing instead. Ultimately, this saves a little time, but there's not really a whole lot to do in Zone E. In solo and co-op speedruns, Zone G is often called Zone Free because it's a pretty straightforward level when it comes to execution, and when it comes to glitches, there's not a whole lot going on either. There is a section with a bunch of these antlion kind of things where if you throw up a box into the third one, it despawns a bomb at the end of the level. It saves a little bit of time in the speedrun logically not having to pick up 2 bombs. Sadly, it requires subpixel manipulation which is nearly impossible RTA, but you can zip through the bombs without standing on the boxes to bypass the bomb wall without picking up any of the bombs. So any level that contains a box, you can actually crash the game and bring yourself back to the title screen, so this isn't exactly exclusive to Zone H. There's an animation where if you're ducking in a box and you let go of the D-pad, you'll kind of pop up from hiding. If you hold up and B, you'll do an up throw with the box, which throws the box vertically up. If you overlap the up throw at the same time the chipmunk pops out of the box, the game will either soft reset back to the title screen or hard crash entirely. Going back almost 10 years ago, the speedrunning community knew using the box crash, ACE, which stands for Arbitrary Code Execution, was probably possible. ACE basically means that you can use a crash to typically warp to a different level or to the end of the game. This was found recently only a few weeks ago by a legendary tasker named 3Creepio. Going back to Zone G for a moment, using specific enemies in the positions they're facing in Zone G when they despawn, and making the boss in G attack a certain trajectory allows us to set up ACE in Zone H. It's currently a co-op only strat, and additionally the chipmunks need to scroll the screen to an exact pixel, then line up Chip and Dale onto pixel perfect positions, then throw crates, and then they also need to be in pixel perfect positions before you trigger the crash glitch. Currently, if line all that up, you can skip stage H entirely. It's possible that further ACE warps will be discovered one day, possibly soon, and finally bring the chipmunks to the ending credits. Speaking of co-op glitches, there's actually a heartbreaking one in Zone I. Towards the end of the level, there's a box containing Zipper, and in co-op, one of the chipmunks usually grabs Zipper to kill all the enemies while the other chipmunk travels behind. You can grab Zipper in a balloon off a death in a very specific way, which delays Zipper from chasing you. You can then move the screen right while staying in balloon form and basically exit the screen with delayed Zipper and enter the boss fight. This would have been huge if Zipper would follow you into the boss room and immediately killed the boss, but sadly Zipper despawns. There is a side effect to this glitch though, and the invincibility that lasts from Zipper actually lasts in the entire boss fight. Sadly, replicating this in other levels isn't possible either. The positions of Zipper are too far away to bring Zipper to any other boss where he spawns in any other level. It hasn't been fully explored, but perhaps in co-op using the invincibility glitch, there's a slightly faster boss kill that you could do to the caterpillar. The last co-op glitch happens when we fight our pal the robot in Zone D. If you're holding a chipmunk and you jump into the robot as he's near the top right corner as he's off screen, the game basically just breaks. The balls will sometimes change from vertical to horizontal, sometimes Dale becomes a corpse or turns into a star, sometimes when you duck you float in the air, sometimes you can become the catfish boss in Zone E. I have absolutely no idea why this one happens, but it's seemingly all visual. It doesn't seem to ever actually crash the game or do anything cool. Zone J features conveyor belts, which are the only place in the game where the chipmunks move autonomously if left idle. If you take damage and immediately hide in a box, the invincibility frames the game usually gives you can be stored in the box itself. This can be used later on to strategically pass through the axe section, exploiting storing iframes and throwing the box using the iframes from before. Overall, the only place you can really use this glitch is Zone J, because the only place conveyor belts exist is Zone J, so it's pretty limited. And you made it to the end, and I thank you for that, and I saved the best glitch for last. If Chip is facing to the left of a screen and Dale jumps into his head for reasons absolutely unknown, Dale will hump Chip's head repeatedly. I truly hope one day after mentioning the recent ACE developments, this allows us speedrunners to warp to the end of the game using ACE. I've never really recommended videos before at the end, but one of the last videos I made was about why certain speedruns are popular and why other ones suck. Why not check it out? Thanks for watching!